let's talk about politics, Liz, and particularly Australian politics as it relates to the war in Israel. What's happening?
Indeedy. Well, today, two federal Labor ministers broke ranks with the government's verbal stance on the Hamas-Israel war, condemning Israel, the state of Israel, for war crimes against Palestinian civilians. They say not enough is being done. Here's Ed Husick today saying his piece.
I feel very strongly that Palestinians are being collectively punished here for Hamas's barbarism. It's been remarked that what happened on October 7 was Israel's equivalent of 9/11. The number of Palestinians that have been killed so far equates to the number of people who lost their lives in 9/11. We don't see any public landmarks in Australia that are being lit up in red, black, white and green. There'll be people that are very uncomfortable with me making that remark. But it goes to the heart of what Palestinians and those who care for them in Australia, this goes to the heart of what they think, which is that Palestinian lives are considered lesser than.
And here's his counterpart, Anne Ali, echoing his sentiments.
No food, no energy, no way out. It is hard to argue that it is not a form of collective punishment.
It seems a little lost on these Labor members that wars always mean the loss of innocent lives. The difference in this conflict is that on the Israeli side, these were lives lost in the most brutal and deliberate of ways at the hands of animals, whereas those lives lost on the Palestinian side of this conflict are needless. Israel is begging these civilians to leave. I would ask both these members, Muslim members of parliament, why they aren't speaking out condemning the 19 Arab states, which are also predominantly Muslim, who all claim to support Palestine, why none of them have yet to take any of the Gazans and offer them refuge. Here's yet another Labor federal backbencher this time, Arya Van Kanu, who's also in this camp.
The people of Gaza cannot be collateral damage. Hamas is a terrorist organisation. But there is no justification whatsoever under any rules of war or anything that will allow a civilian population to square off against an army.
So IDF is a terrorist organisation as well?
It is an army.
Oh, she really stumbled over that one. Oh, well, to be clear. Honestly, I do wonder at the wisdom of so many Labor members speaking about something which, I mean, Hamas is not taking notes. You can demand anything that you want, but they're really not interested. We know that this conflict is going to wage until, as the Israelis say, Hamas is annihilated. I would argue that they're doing this for the betterment of the world. We know this has to happen, and this will not end until it does. Loss of civilian lives is inevitable in any war, Joe.
Yeah, look, I think that there's a lot. There's a lot that needs to be said here. I think Ed Husick spoke very honestly. Obviously, he was the first Muslim MP in the Australian Parliament, and he carries that responsibility very seriously, it would seem. No doubt many members of the Muslim community would have been expressing their views to him very forthrightly. I don't think he was actually calling for the Opera House to be lit up with the Palestinian flag. I think he was just saying, we tend to ignore the Palestinian side of the ledger. Now, as you rightly said, there is a big difference in war, as there is in peace, between how people die. There is a big difference between deliberately targeting women and children specifically, going after them to kill them, to burn them, to abduct them, to use them as human collateral in wartime negotiations, and then to threaten to execute them publicly if your demands are not met. There is a big difference between that and innocent people, as you say, being killed inevitably when you are targeting military installations. So that is the first thing. There is a difference between deliberately targeting civilians and targeting military installations and military figures, and unfortunately civilians being killed in the process. Now that is often in the case of Hamas because they are deliberately using innocent people as human shields. There are reports, and you can believe them or not, but there are many reports that they actually deliberately put their rocket launchers in hospitals or near hospitals, in or near schools. I've been near that area myself. There's playgrounds on the Israeli side that have bomb shelters disguised as play equipment so the kids can shelter there when the rockets inevitably come, but they don't feel in existential terror. So there is that. So
but that difference is not being acknowledged by these pro-Palestinian.
That is part of the problem. And then the idea of saying you can be, I'm not in favour of Hamas, but we have to think about what they're doing, the cause that they're acting in is a just one. Now, you didn't hear many people saying after September 11, which is the comparison that so many people are making, Ed, in terms of numbers of Palestinians killed, the Jews in terms of, or the Israelis in terms of the impact it's had on their psyche. You didn't hear people saying, 3,000 people lost their lives in 9/11. But, Al-Qaeda makes a good point about US bases in Saudi Arabia. Like, you just do not do that. And again, and then the third thing I would say is, yes, the number of, anyone who's watched this situation knows, as has happened before, the Palestinian casualties almost always outnumber the Israeli casualties because the Israelis have more firepower. But if people are so upset about this, why are they not blaming Hamas for not handing over the hostages, which is basically Israel's only demand at this point in order to stop the bombing? And why are they not blaming Hamas for the 500 people who Hamas apparently killed?
And why are they not blaming
hospital?
those 19 Arab states who are all like, free Palestine, yay, we're totally pro-Palestine, not going to take any of the Gazans? Because in my humble opinion, that looks a lot like the fact that you are setting up Israel to look like butchers in this instance, because you could help so incredibly much
Joe, you've raised a big
exiting
problem
Gaza.
When Ed Husick says that the Palestinians are being collectively punished, he's absolutely right that they're being collectively punished. He's just wrong about who's punishing them. The IDF are the ones who warn Palestinians, we are about to attack the area where you are, get out, and we'll give you some time to do that. While the Hamas terrorists tell their own people, no, we want you to stay there because you're more used to us dead as martyrs than as living citizens. They're being collectively punished, not by the IDF, but by Hamas. It's Israel who have said, look, we will end the siege of Gaza if you just release the hostages.
Exactly.
That's all you've got to do. And then you'll have food, you'll have electricity, you'll have water. It's Hamas who have said, no, we would rather our own people starve than release women and children who happen to be Jewish to freedom. And so Ed Husick is right, but he's completely wrong on this topic.